CityWorks Expo is a collaborative, co-creative, and multidisciplinary idea exchange and festival conference that happens each fall in Roanoke, Virginia. By day, attendees are immersed in thought-provoking presentations, riveting performances, and engaging dialogue. By night, the conference continues with after-hours networking opportunities during street festivals, parties, and musical events. To learn more about Expo, visit cityworksexpo.com. Expo 2014 was made possible by these fine sponsors.
First, I have to thank all of you. I had a terrific time at CityWorks Expo last year, and it was so much fun and it was so inspiring. And I started talking to my friend Lauren Gary about this idea of placemaking and leadership. So in many ways, the presentation that you're hearing today was born out of the seeds of the conversation about a year ago. So as Ed says, I have a lot of titles these days, right? I'm white, I'm female, I'm middle-aged, right? I'm a mom, I'm a single parent, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend, I'm a neighbor. I'm also, today, Beth Macy's warm-up act. I'm also a president and CEO. And because of that, recently, like in the last 6 months, I've been asked a lot of questions about placemaking. Lynn, what are the characteristics of a successful community? And I've been asked a lot, what about leadership? Talk to us about what it means to be a woman CEO, particularly with all those other titles and all the baggage that it carries. And so I started thinking about this and thinking back to the conversation that I had with Lauren, and it occurs to me that these issues are entirely intertwined. And so you all are debuting, are hearing the first time I've actually pulled this presentation together. So forgive me for my mistakes, but I want to weave in about the 11 kind of strategies or the 11 lessons I've learned around placemaking and leadership. And why 11? Because 10 round numbers, they're just boring, right? You always, and 11 too is one louder. Yes, there you go. You got the joke. So I started my career working in the Soviet Union in 1988, and I was working on this project called Seeds of Democracy. And what I was doing was I was traveling around. This is 1988, right? I told you I was middle-aged. I was traveling around the 15 republics giving environmental groups computers and modems, right? It was called the Seeds of Democracy. And so at some point, I found myself traveling between Almaty, Kazakhstan, those are the mountains in back of Almaty, to Bishkek, Kyrgyzstan, and I had a couple of computers and a couple of modems, and I was going to go meet with the head of a environmental organization who later went on to represent the Green Party in Parliament. And I'm on the step, right? You guys you can just envision, like the middle of nowhere, it's a paved road, barely, no houses, nothing, on an old Soviet bus, and it breaks down, right? This plays out all the time, and so it breaks down, and so I'm like, oh crap, what are you going to do? I hate being late. So I grabbed my backpack, and I just started walking down the road with my hand out. Hello, car, yo, zoom. Hello, car, zoom. And so eventually I get picked up and I hitchhike the rest of the way to Bishkek. But I illustrate that it wasn't until the tanks rolled into Pushkin Square in 1991 that I realized the power of what I was doing. And by that point, I had set up 11 email nodes. And at that point, I knew that the Iron Curtain could never come down again, that information was flowing back and forth, and I realized, wow, I really made a difference. So why am I telling you this, besides, demonstrating just really how old I am? Because the issue is when you're working in areas where you're not sure where you're going, when you're working in developing place, and situations are constantly changing, that having a compass, understanding exactly where you're going, a deep belief in mission is the most critical factor that you can have. It will help you steer through many tumultuous times. And so that's my first lesson, that a compass is critical. So I'm also an avid cyclist. I love to bike, as a lot of people will who know me will tell you. And so I started biking in 5th grade to school, 5 miles uphill both ways, absolutely. Between 10th and 11th grade, I biked from Rochester, New York to Lake Placid, 250 miles all by myself. My mom says now, I don't know why I let you do that. I'm like, I don't know, I had fun, right? And so for me, biking is an escape. like pedaling in that perfect pace line with a landscape whizzing by, the sun shining in. I am just absolutely transported to that place of limitless possibilities. You guys all know that feeling. You're doing something that you love, and time just seems to stand still, right? Like, we've all know that. But let me ask you, have you ever heard the screech of tires? The crackling of bones? The unmistakable thud as a car hits a person, be it on a bike or walking? I know. I'm a 3-time survivor of car-bike accidents. I've walked away 3 times. I consider myself lucky, right? So when I talk about the safety of our streets, when I talk about why it is so important that we have safe and welcoming streets, just not for able-bodied people, but for 8-year-olds and 80-year-olds. When I talk that we need to create communities that start with the very essence of safety, that's not rhetoric for me. That is a deeply held belief. So that's my second lesson, that safe and welcoming streets matter. They matter deeply. So, hold on, I'm trying to figure out where we are. Okay, that's where we are. I told you this is new. You guys are so patient. So, everybody here, I've been to a CityWorks Expo, so I can guarantee that everybody sitting here is an innovator. You guys are big thinkers. Right? Really big thinkers. You're constantly pushing ideas. You're thinking about what's the next big move that we need to make, and you're gonna fail. How many of you have failed? How many of you have failed miserably? I've been fired before. Right? Because when you're pushing things, when you're innovating, when you're trying to discover the next big thing, you're going to fail. So I Googled today, Apple failed products. And who knew there were so many hits, right? Because that's what we do. So why is it when cities try to do something new and different, when they try to close down a street to make it a pedestrian only, when they try a new policy, when they put in bike lanes and it fails, why do we throw them under the bus? Why is it that citizens say, you tried something new and it didn't work? Well, guess what? All of us, to a person and cities, when we're trying to do something new, when we're trying to explore and to make things better, we're going to fail. We need to get comfortable with success, because if we start playing it safe individually, what happens? When you start making decisions that are safe, don't you feel just a little bit smaller? Don't you feel that your landscape has shrunk just a little bit? The same thing with cities. They begin to stagnate. So when we as a group, cities and individuals, begin to be afraid of failure, when we begin to stop taking risks, we start our decline. So that's my third lesson, that we need to get comfortable with failure. Yeah, a typo there. It should be a small f. Life, you know. So do you think, I told you I'm Beth Macy's warm-up act. I'm so excited about this. Do you think that Beth Macy sat down after her Neiman Fellowship and said, you know what, I'm going to write a New York Times bestseller. That is my goal. Right? Does anybody think that that's what Beth did? I'm going to write a New York Times bestseller. You know what? I want to write a book that eventually gets made into a movie. Now we joke, right? We joke about that, but you know that there are authors, you know that there's people out there in the world, and that's exactly what they say. It's like, I want to write a bestseller. I'm going to write a book that it's going to, be made into a movie. And look at all the movies that are being made now. I'm going to have this piece and that piece and that. No, Beth didn't care a rat's ass about that. She sat down to write the best story that she could write. She sat down and interviewed people. She dove into it. She wanted to convey the most amazing story that her talent could carry for her. She was focusing on excellence and not on success. And I have a lot of interns both in my previous job at EPA and now at CNU, and I also have a son, which you'll hear about later. And the idea that I'm trying to convey to all of these younger folks is give up on success. Who gives a rat's ass about success, the trappings, the promotion, right? The next big thing. Drop it all. Let go of success and instead concentrate on excellence. I told my son once, he was working on a science project, and he worked really hard on it. And I was like, you know what, sweetie? I don't care what grade you get. I really don't care. You could fail this as far as I'm concerned. I know you could have done no better on it. The fact he got an A is good, right? But I didn't focus on the outcome. I focused on the effort he put in. Ed and I have had a lot of conversations about this, and he said, if I tried to be successful, it never would have worked. He was just doing something that was fun. So, as Ed said, I spent a lot of my time working in the EPA, in the Smart Growth Program. I spent about 15 years there, and for 10 years, I focused on the nexus between density and water quality. And I won't bore you with those technical details. It just about puts me to sleep now, and I'm sure it would put all of you to sleep. But I was looking. I had done a bunch of research, like 2 or 3 years, that the very aspect of development, when you're putting more development or redeveloping a parking lot, that's going to be better for overall water quality. Yeah, you guys are already falling asleep. So I'm in 2006, I'm at a stormwater coordinators meeting in Burlington, Vermont. Yeah, I'm still putting you to sleep. Go Burlington. And they're like, this is great, Lynn. Can you just stop talking about the details? How do we operationalize this? How do you put this into a permit? I don't know, I'm a little researcher, right? What do I know about this? But what started was an amazing collaboration with the Office of Water, with the legal folks at EPA, the Office of Enforcement, and we created a permit that we thought was legally defensible. And guess what? West Virginia went ahead and took it wholesale and proposed it. I was like, oh my God. I was just, we were just kind of playing around, and West Virginia picked it up and they put it as a state regulation. So then I called my buddies on the outside of the agency, Smart Growth America, and I was like, this is out for public comment. Can you do anything? And they contacted the Main Street Association, they contacted developers, and we got a whole bunch of support. And in the end, West Virginia passed this permit. It's the most innovative stormwater permit on the books today in the country. And then Tennessee followed suit, and 8 other states followed suit. It's this whole tsunami, right? But the point here is we can't solve complex issues alone. Partners matter. There's a lot of really hard stuff that we're working on, and if we don't work together, if we don't find folks that can help us out, we're not going to get to the end. So CityWorks Expo, well, I thought we were done. So here's another piece that I want to talk to you about. What the hell's Ed doing 4 years ago? Right? What was he thinking about? I'm going to pull together a whole bunch of people and talk about the problems of mid-sized cities. I'm going to form Placemaker Nation. When you begin to work on what feeds you, when you begin to work on that very essence, right? A spark comes about, right? And so that's the next lesson, is focus on what feeds you. And how does this relate to placemaking? Well, I'll tell you. So my mom's an artist, and so I saw this firsthand. In the 1970s, nobody could afford, a studio, right? So she got a bunch of friends together, and there was this old industrial building, and they just kind of took it over. Little artist colony. This is 1970s, and more artists came in. And then the city began to pay attention, and there was a building next door. They offered reduced rents. And now there's this whole colony of artists kind of working. Again, this is the 1970s, moving into the early 80s, and then a local gallery is like, well, let's have an outdoor show. All of a sudden, over a course of 5 or 6, 7 years, boom, Rochester, New York has an arts district. Who knew? It has become an economic driver for Rochester, New York, and just not there. It has also become a driver in arts district in Paducah, Kentucky, Dallas, Texas, and a dozen other places. When you begin to do what feeds you as a city or as a person, you reach the outcomes that you're really seeking. And so that's my next. Focus on what feeds you, the geeky and groovy. Has anyone seen that tagline on the Facebook page for CityWorks Expo? Really like it, geeky and groovy. So I told you I have an 11-year-old son. He's a boy. And I was like, what am I going to do with a boy? And he started to walk, and who knows this? He came home dirty all the time, right? All the time. What is it with kids, right? They get dirty all the time. So I came up with a saying when he was young, and I said to him, it's not a good day unless you come home dirty. Right? And so he would go out, and that saying really facilitated his exploration. It's a good day. I've got to get dirty. I've got to get into the mud. I've got to get into the grass. I've got to explore. And he reminded of me this recently when he put on a pair of dress pants, and I kid you not, 32 minutes later, he came back and he was dirty. I was like, dear God, boy, what? And he's like, Mom, 32 minutes into the day, it's already been a good day. I was reminded of this recently, not last week, actually this week, I was in New York City. CNU was hosting for the first time in its history a Transportation and Equity Summit. Ed said that I'm shaking up the organization, and I don't think they knew what they were getting into. So CNU was founded in 1993, and so it's 2014, and it's the first time they had a conversation on equity. Okay, we'll just put that in the proverbial bike rack for right now and come back to it. And with the common theme that emerged over the 3 days of conversation was that really, if you want to include equity, if you want to ensure that all voices are being heard, you need to ensure that everybody is at the table. And then when you do that, the public participation process gets really messy, and we all know that. And as facilitators and as mediators, you're always trying to you're talking about bus headways right now, but we're trying to figure out, where's the best place to put the bus stops, not the headways. We're going to talk about that later, right? I mean, who hasn't been in a meeting where something like that has happened, that somebody brings up a point that's really important to them? And one of our speakers raised this issue around public participation and messiness. She said, I was at a design workshop, and we were trying to work with an underserved, disadvantaged community around transit issues. And we wanted to talk about design. So the facilitator asked everyone to design a childhood memory. Now, you and I would probably think, a happy childhood memory, like me biking up to Lake Placid or something. But there were a lot of recent immigrants at this, and their childhood memories were based in trauma, when they were hiding for the militia that were coming in to kill their families, when they were hiding from gangs. Her point was that when we do public participation, it gets messy, it gets hard, and we need to sit there. We need to sit and embrace that messiness. We need to acknowledge that hard place of where people are, and that is the only way that we are going to ensure safe and equitable transportation systems and streets and communities. So what she said was, you're starting here, and then you're going to diverge. It's going to get messy, and then you're going to end up in a better place. So my next lesson, I've lost count of what number we're on, 7, is embrace the mess, right? You get to better outcomes, both with my boy and at this transportation summit. So I never thought that my professional life would be guided, in part, by a Canadian hockey player. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? Okay, well, so now you'll have to wait and sit into the story to see where I'm going with this. So as the new president of CNU, I was spending a lot of time thinking about where the placemaking trends are now and where they're going to be in 5 years, right? So for example, I'm absolutely convinced that the health insurance companies are going to be spending hundreds of millions of dollars on community design in the next 5 years. Blue Cross and Blue Shield has already paid $22 million to transform 9 Iowa communities, and they're not doing this to create place. They're doing it to achieve better health outcomes. So I'm thinking, so that's one trend. What else is coming down the pike, and how can I position CNU now to influence and leverage those emerging trends? Well, but that's the point, right? And so when you're talking to cities, they often don't think about where things are going. We're not going to build the transit line. Nobody's going to ride it. And that decision is being made constantly. How many people have been in meetings when you're trying to advocate for more headways? I see Sharon nodding her head. Or for a new light rail. Or for anything, a different school. No. The demand is not here. Well, we're not talking about here, baby cakes. We're talking about 5 years from now. You've got to go to where the puck is going, not to where the puck is now. It worked for Gretzky. Why can't it work for communities? This picture right now is Minneapolis. They opened up a new green line, and there's a lot of fraught. We shouldn't do it. Oh, yeah. First day, it was oversubscribed. Same, new metro line in D.C. first week exceeded projected ridership outcomes for the entire year. Right? We need to be thinking constantly, both as individuals within our organizations as well as cities, where is it going? Because if we don't start thinking about that, we're going to get caught in this fear. we're not going to be able to position ourselves to leverage the emerging trends and to begin to turn communities around. Do you think Corbyn's like, yeah, I know how to turn this city around. It's the demand is here now. No, he created the demand. He knew that in 5 years that neighborhood, the West End, is just going to be a great place, and you do it bit by bit. So, don't plan for where you are now, but plan for where you're going. Wayne Gretzky, who knew? Canadian hockey player. Okay. Does anyone think what we're doing is hard? How many of you have sat in the middle of the night and said, "Dear God, why am I doing this? I just want to quit"? How many? Right? Like, we are doing some really hard stuff. Why? Because we are promoting change. And do people like to change? No. This is hard. I mean, we just need to acknowledge that this isn't easy. And that's what makes these gatherings like CityWorks Expo so nice. Is like, oh yeah, you're having a hard day. Oh yeah, man, that public meeting last night just about kicked my butt. I'll tell you right now, my new job is kicking my butt. My friends are like, don't you love it? I'm like, it's kicking my butt right now. Just saying, it's hard. So when a new transit line opens, or when you have a meeting where people don't kill each other and you move to some agreement, we need to celebrate success. And we so often don't do that. We need to step back and to just acknowledge what we have done. And I am guessing, I'm going to stop you all right now, because you're all like, yeah, Lynn, we've heard that. We've read the happiness books too. Yeah, no, stop. What we do is hard. We need to acknowledge that. And anytime we get forward momentum on this, any piece of forward momentum, we need to stop and say, yeah, man, I did that. And you know why? Because not only does it begin to feed your bucket, your optimism bucket, not only does it re-energize you, it also creates an amazing teaching opportunity for your organization and for the people who work for you and also for the community. Celebrate success, and that's going to foster more momentum. I need to find a better success picture, but in a moment. So, our cities should be designed to be explored. You know, Main Street, we all know about exploring Main Streets, but what about the back alleys? What about the parks, the hidden plaza? What about all the different nooks and crannies that make a city just kind of worth exploring, right? And so I work for an organization that focuses a lot on beauty and design. So we need to create places that are beautiful, that literally take your breath away. So you think that can't be done. So this is a picture of City Center, which is a new development that just opened in Washington, D.C. I don't know if it just opened. Might have been a year. You know, time just goes when you're getting older. And thus middle-aged. And I had dinner with a board member, I guess about a week ago, and I said, hey, Dan, I want to take you through and to see this plaza. And we walk into here, this right here, and he just stopped, and it literally took his breath away. As individuals, we need to look for those moments where we are surprised by beauty, where we recognize design, where we recognize some exquisite, for lack of a better term, intersection. Like, wow, this is designed really well. And it's going to feed our buckets. And cities should strive not for the competent, not for the consensus that, 50 different community groups have said that, it's like a lipstick on a pig. Let's design something that is beautiful and that pops. So that's my next lesson, that design matters, that we need to recognize beautiful places. I really wanted this lesson to be wear comfortable shoes. I'm trying to come up with a lesson that has that wear comfortable shoes. Because if cities are designed for exploring, you can't explore them in high heels. I'm trying to start a new trend that CEOs can wear sneakers. It didn't go over so well in New York City, but perhaps in Roanoke. So I work in an organization that context is everything, right? That we're constantly talking about the form of the building to the street. We're talking about the context of the region, the neighborhood, the city. Right, we're constantly putting that all together, including the space between the buildings. And I know all of this. And the thing that frustrates me is that I have to constantly remind our members, all 2,600 of them, and if you're not a member, you should join, that postcards are in the back. Constantly reminding our members, it's not about the building. It's not about the street. It's about people. We are creating places for people to live their lives. We're creating a place where the grandmother who lives on the corner can have a slightly easier day, that the 26-year-old kid who just boomeranged back, right? We're creating a place for the 12-year-old kid who doesn't feel like he fits. We're creating a place for people. We're creating a place where people can experience more life. We're creating a place for people. We need to constantly go back there. It's not about average daily trips taken in a car. It's not about the bicycle counts. It's not about any of the indicators that we have heard in a lot of the sustainability propaganda that's out there. It is about people. I want to design a community that makes everybody's life in this room better, and the people who aren't in here as well. Because when we create a place where people are able to interact, you increase that connectedness, right? And we all know that that's an indicator of happiness. So cities, I've had a lot of conversations with mayors and with governors, and I keep saying, isn't it about the people? Yes, yes, yes. We'll have our public participation meetings, and you know how I feel about that, right? But that's my last lesson that I want to leave you all. There's me and my friend Lee right there. People, the interconnectedness of people, but that people matter and that we need to design our places for people. We need to ensure that we have ability to interconnect both in the kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? The spontaneous interactions at the coffee shop or at the market, and also, more that our communities and neighborhoods have the public gathering spaces. Not necessarily for the prostitutes, But the piece that I want to leave you on, and of course I have to give my own propaganda, that when we create places for people, the landscape changes, right? When people are interacting more with each other, and we know this from all the innovation districts, we all begin to be more creative, more productive. We engage more. We're able to persevere more. So the connectedness about people just isn't for place, it's about for all of us. And that's what I'm constantly reminded about when I'm asked for what are the characteristics of both, placemaking and leadership. That fundamentally, leadership is about enabling a person's agency to do the best that they can do. And that's what place does. So thank you very much.